the trains run on time for Fab Academy on version control and GitLab. Fiore?
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen 1 second. Okay. So today we will see some tools for working groups, so collaborating with other people and sharing your content, and hopefully also some project management to better address the deadlines that you have for Fab Academy. So I just introduced myself. I work in software since 1993. I graduated in Fab Academy in 2014, and I'm working in the staff and as a global evaluator in Fab Academy. I started my Fab Lab in Kashina, which is now closed, and the regional network of labs. I think a couple are still alive. I helped set up some labs around the world, and as on the software side, I helped build some of the projects for the Fab Lab network, like the Academy websites management, the evaluation platform, the jobs platform, the Fab event, the conference management system. I helped also a little on Fab Labs.io. I co-founded the Fab Academy, which is another class that we have we call it Academy. So in the group of the Fab Lab network that uses the same approach as the Fab Academy, and it's on textiles and biology and design. I have started Factory, which is a small studio where I do my things, and among which this is a workshop that I run around the world about making things in Fab Lab, and I did also this nice project, which is an interactive installation, which is a giant Arduino. This is one of the founders of the Arduino project sleeping on my giant 80 mega that we did in Fab Lab UAE in Dubai. Okay, now the serious stuff. Today we'll talk about the version control, which is kind of the basic protocol that we use for exchanging information in the Fab Lab network. The Fab Cloud platform, which is the set of tools that we use to do version control, but not only. Some tips on project management and some tips on making documentation and sharing documentation. So version control is basically a technique where you keep a snapshot of your files in time, and you can build basically a project out of these snapshots that you take during the project development in a way that allows to track who is contributing what in a project, and also to solve things that are called conflicts, meaning that two people, for example, edit the same file in your project. For doing that, we use Git, as Neil told you during class, and this is a very, very important software for the open source community, for the, let's say, because this is managing the biggest project probably in the open source community, which is the Linux kernel, but also powers, it's the channel where all the open source project can be accessible to everybody, because you can, using Git, you can contribute to any project, and people managing that project can accept your contribution and see it doesn't break anything. And the key concept of Git is that at any moment you have a full copy of your repository in your computer, a full copy of all your data and the history of your data in your computer, but you can sync this information back to a server on the cloud or to another computer or to another, to a USB stick, for example. And so your work becomes more easily replicated in other places for backup purposes, for instance, but also other people can get your project and clone it and have a copy of your project in their computer too. Mastering Git, I won't cover all the commands of Git today, but I just tell you as an advice, being a long time software developer, that you need to master this concept, like what is a repository, what is a commit, how to create branches, how to pull and push from archives, how to merge your work with other people's work, how to handle contribution from other people, like pull requests, and how to tag stable version of your work in a way that you can share it more confidently. The key is practice, really, because this is very easy stuff when you practice it. I would suggest to start with the GUI client, so something graphical that doesn't scare you a lot, but then to learn the command line, because this gives you like the superpowers on Git. You can start doing it really fast. And there is a lot of ways to use Git. The one that I really recommend for starting is using a text editor with Git embedded inside. I use this every day. It saved me a lot of time. And like Visual Studio Code from Microsoft or Atom are really good editors because they integrate Git inside. And you don't have to install anything. You just select the files that you want to commit and just do it. And for people who never use Git on any command line, this is an amazing tool developed by GitHub, which is a wizard. Basically, you install this application, which is called GitIt, and it guides you in installing Git on your computer, selecting a folder where you can store your projects, performing in your computer in a guided way all the tasks that you need to learn for Git. And this is incredible because it's like a magic, because it tells you create in your computer an Hello World project with Git commands, and then it checks if you did it properly. And this is a very nice for people that don't have experience. I stop here about version control because I think this is a topic that requires practice on a computer, on a terminal, but I recommend to take a look to the recitation I did last year, which were 2, and go into much more detail on Git and on version control and also on GitLab. I moved to Fab Cloud now and just want to show you Git in practice so you can see what happens in a repository and what we use this version tracking for. I think this is a better example than playing with an Hello World thing, and also gives you a practical way of starting today using these tools that I'm telling you. The idea of Fab Cloud is to have a single place in the network where we can collect projects, when we can host websites, when labs, people, students, people from the FabLab community can work and collaborate together on any project, not only on Fab Academy projects. And this is, I think, a very, very interesting fact that the Fab Academy is giving access to all the FabLab network to this system, because this is a value. And the way of creating a new user into Fab Cloud, it's very easy. You just go and register on FabLabs.io, and you can log in on Fab Clouds using your FabLabs.io identity. This doesn't apply for the Fab Academy students because in order to have ready your usernames, your user for creating your projects and all these things, we pre-registered your accounts. So you can just log in the main gitlab.fabcloud.org with your username or the email address you registered at Fab Academy, and as password the student ID that was assigned to you at the beginning. Of course, you should change this password. So what we do in the Fab Academy, how we use these tools in the Fab Academy. So all your student file, of course, each of you has a project where to store the documentation for the Fab Academy, and this is under version control. Also, we use this to track people, because with groups, we can basically group together all the instructors, and the instructor have access to some part of the repository with write access. All the content of the Fab Academy is public, so anybody can access the content in read-only mode, and the authorized people can access it in a controlled way. We use it for hosting the Fab Academy website. We use it for hosting the handbook. We use the class project that you have access to discuss issues, to talk, to communicate instead of a mailing list. And you can have static site generators, many other things. Just to show you the power of this arrangement, you can see this is a snapshot from last year, but still applies for this year. you can see that we organize all the content and all the organization working into the Fab Academy using this the group system. First step, when you log in into GitLab, you need to go to the settings and update the settings like your profile. It's nice to know who you are talking to, no? And to see, to maybe have contacts for contacting people other than GitLab username. And you should also watch the notification settings, which is the way that GitLab knows if you want to be notified of change in projects. So this is the global setting. But you need to do this. This is the first assignment I'm giving you in this small recitation, to go to the class project. I didn't say these slides are in the schedule, are linked in the schedule page, so you can access the same slides I'm showing. If you click on the class project, you need to set the setting to watch. This means that everything that is posted in the class project is notified to you by email. The other important thing, as you know, you have different ways of accessing the Git repository in GitLab. This is a setting that you do only once. You need to generate your SSH key. The SSH key is basically a way of cryptographically encrypting the communication between your computer and the Git server. And this is the required way of talking to the GitLab fabcloud.org, other than editing your site with a web interface. So just follow the instructions. It's very easy. It's well described in last year recitation. So generate your key. When you generate your key, you should add these into the authorized keys of your GitLab. This will allow to recognize you when you push or pull from the repository. Okay, now a quick overview of how you can use GitLab for project management. So basically, I need now to access GitLab, so I can show you directly. Basically, I have all your projects inside my account, but I can create a new project very easily from the interface. And when you see here, you can create a blank project, so an empty repository, but you also have the opportunity, apart from creating from templates, to import other projects. This is very, very useful because you can create a copy, for example, of your existing repo and make it for publishing drafts of your website. Or you can clone any project from GitHub directly into GitLab. This is, for example, the way all the students' websites have been created. I cloned them from my repository. And when you create a project, you can select also the visibility of the project. This is another very useful thing because you can create a project that can be shown only to internal users. So for this big organization, for example, or you can create private projects for things that you don't want to share with other people, but you still want to have ready on GitLab for the future, for example. Okay. So I need to fill in a name. I will just call it Fiore Dimo, and I've created the project. Okay, the project is empty, but in 3 clicks I can already populate some content inside. For example, I can click Add README, and it will create the default page of my project. This is where you describe your project, for example, to the others. No. When I say this, I have a commit message. This is Git, so you are committing stuff. But the important thing is that once you created one file, your project is ready to be copied locally. So I can go to the top of my repository. I can copy this address and clone my work in my local computer. But let's move back to the project management. So the file interface I've just shown you. I have 3 tips for you. One is how to create an empty folder inside your repository. Some people get crazy about this. And it's easy to create it, simply creating an empty file called .gitkeep. This is, will create an empty folder. And another thing that people always ask me is how you replace a file. I have a new version of one file on my computer and I just want to upload it back to GitLab. You just upload the file with the same name and it will be replaced. Last tip, save often. Like once in a while, the network will break or something will happen or someone else will edit the page after you, but not before you save, and you will lose the change. So when you edit on GitLab, save often. And I suggest in the long run, it's much better to clone the files locally so you can work offline on your computer and simply use Git to push and pull stuff. Big topic, the issue trackers. So issue trackers are a way, born a way to maybe to do customer support or to track the problems of some defects or some projects. Issue trackers are now used everywhere, also as a way of managing projects. Managing projects because you can use the issue tracker as a way to visualize and represent all the work that you have to do in a project and all the problems or the issues or the things that have to be researched for that project. The issues in GitLab are part of any project. So if you go back to our demo, I have an empty issue now. I can create a new issue and say, plan for the next recitation, for instance. Okay, this now becomes an item that I can track. I can assign due date. Basically, it's a way of managing a task that I have to do. When I go in a work mode, so in a group mode, so that my project belongs to many users are working together in the same project, issues become a way of communicating, on creating conversations, because you can comment on issues, because you can assign issues to people. So the only limit that there is, we are trying to limit the use of email. So it's not possible to reply to an issue directly via email, but you need to click the link on the footer of the issue to open the interface of GitLab. This way, we avoid conversation to happen outside GitLab. And we try to keep conversation relevant, of course. We don't want to open so many tickets without any reason. Also the netiquette, the policy is to close issues when they are completed. Okay, the nice twist that issues have taken in the last years, like inside GitHub and GitLab, is that then now you can see issues as Kanban boards. Kanban boards is a tool invented for productivity by Toyota engineers to make better cars faster and cheaper. But now basically the Kanban boards, especially with Trello, which made them very popular, are used also for managing projects. There are many, let's say, productivity techniques that can use these Kanban boards. I recommend you to take a look at two. One is the Pomodoro technique, which is basically a way of tracking where you spend your time and how to augment the focus, splitting the work in chunks of 20 minutes each, with 5 minutes break between one of these Pomodoros, they're called. And the other one is getting things done, which is a technique of organizing the tasks in a way that you always come up with the next task that you can do for a project, for instance. They are interesting. I'm addicted to this kind of productivity enhancing things, so I recommend you to check them. The idea, for example, for issue tracking is creating a workflow. No? So you have a backlog of issues like uploading one assignment in your web page, taking pictures for your final projects, creating the software for your final project, or all the tasks that you need to do. You can funnel them into a workflow that is maybe a backlog, something that you are currently doing, something that you have on hold, something that you have done. And organizing the work in this way allows you to have a single picture with all the stuff that you have to do for one project and all the things, where are them. And also another way, for example, for group collaboration is to have one column for each person in the team and see who is doing what on the project, so that you can also show the individual contribution from each member of the project. This will be useful, for example, for the machine week. And another way of managing these projects is doing milestones. So you have a big picture of your project. You define milestones for each of the project features, for example. And then you can group issues according to milestones. When you cleared all issues for one milestone, you have achieved a specific goal into your application. This is especially important if you have a lot of a complex project that you want to split in chunks rather than address completely in all its complexity. And this is for spiral development. This is probably one iteration of the spiral is one milestone. And basically, this is the technique that is used by agile project management, where you break the work into epics, and you complete these epics made of stories which represent a single unit of work, something that you can digest and process in few hours. And this makes the development much easier because you don't see all the complexity at the same time. I also use pretty often Wikis when I want to take notes, because this is very immediate. You don't have publishing workflows, you don't have other things, but I recommend to check out the other static site generator, which I will talk about later. One thing that I'm like, this is probably a professional deformation, but I like a lot GitLab because of that, is that you can script things. So I didn't create by hand each of your websites. I wrote a program that reads a text file, which has your name, your email address, and the lab you are in. And the script went through all the GitLab projects and created a folder for a lab, a folder for your project, imported the data. All these things are scriptable. So learning how to use scripts helps you a lot in general, because now every system on the internet has a scripting API. So you can basically automate the internet in some ways. On the other side, for GitLab, for example, you can check your repo sites with one script. You can maybe clone a template that you have for a project with a single command. And this is done creating a token, which is basically an identifier for your identity. That basically you can write a program that acts as you when you interact with GitLab on the web interface. The program interacts with the API. This is the point. And there is the Python API, which is very good, but also you can use the command line and call the GitLab API. So, last step, the documentation.
Sorry, yeah. Just a note to add on the API. Over time, it's grown, so all of DBA at MIT is run through the API, where we have hundreds of users and hundreds of machines and many labs. And what we do is you can scrape the API. So we have machines, labs, training, people, projects, and then you can map many to one or one to many. And then you can walk the API, and we use it to generate lists of who's authorized for what machine, documentation in the labs. Walking the API actually, by making these associations, you can use sort of all of GitLab as a giant database that's become really valuable to run our lab.
Yeah, especially the kind of support that really gives the API is that you don't have to rebuild most of the things that you usually have to build in a group collaboration application. So the authentication, managing groups, managing users, all this stuff it's already built in the platform. You can write application that log in with GitLab, for example.
Yeah.
But this is not with our authorization. You have a personal token that can be used to do this. Okay. Continue? Yeah. Okay. So this is the probably the most important feature for me for GitLab for this collaboration, because it allows to do a lot of things out of the content that we store inside GitLab. Imagine we have built a repository of data, and this tool, the continuous integration, allows us to build a logic on top of this content. Logic that can be triggered every time we modify the content. So just to understand how powerful this is, we can take the example of the website publishing. Listen to this, because this means free hosting for your projects under the GitLab. So each of you has a username in GitLab. If you create a project which is named your username.fabcloud.io, this is the name of the project, you will have a home page under the fabcloud.io site. Of course, you have to trigger the publishing workflow, which I'll tell you, but also all the projects that you create in your personal account. So you can create projects in your username space, let's say. They are served online under your username.fabcloud.io/project name. So I use this all the time to test out like the templates that I've shown, also for projects that I'm working on, because it's much faster than GitLab, than GitHub in the publishing workflow. It's about 1 minute faster, so it's also useful for that. So how to publish your website? You create a project that I've shown before. You import any HTML template, for example. There is this nice HTML5 app website where you have a lot of HTML5 templates. I'm not doing advertising, they are free, so you can download them. You upload them into your project that you created, and you just add one file, which is called the GitLab CI. You can choose here GitLab CI, and you can just choose here HTML, and bam! You created a new published website inside GitLab. It's just enough that you, for instance, here create an index.html file, or you upload an existing template inside this folder, and you have a published website. And what is happening basically is that GitLab is is creating a virtual server, installing some software, copying your files over the publishing directory. And the GitLab CI is the file that basically, configuration file that just describes what operation should be done to publish your site. And this is basically the number of things that happen while you save, you send your push to the repository. And the same can be done with, for example, Jekyll. I made a test project that you can use, this FabAcadmJan28 Jekyll, which is a pre-configured Jekyll scaffold template that you can use for starting a Jekyll website. And it looks like this. So take this as another option of your markdown website. It's pretty clean and simple, but this is content which is generated dynamically from the files that are found inside the repo. So what GitLab is doing is running a software called Jekyll that takes markdown files and spits out HTML pages. And you can also run it locally. I won't go into the details. The other one that I just want to show you is the MKDocs, which is the system that we are using for building the student templates websites. And it's even easier than Jekyll and other systems. And this is the installation for installing MKDocs locally. But of course, you can just clone your existing website, which is a Markdown and MKDocs powered template. And this is the last, let's say, tool that I show you today. This is the Git book, which is the one that we use for generating, for example, the Fab Academy documentation. So if we go to FabAcadmJ28 2019 and you see these documents, so this document is generated by Markdown files through the GitLab continuous integration. This means that every time we edit any of the files, this website is generated. MKDocs gives you an additional thing, which is the Mobi EPUB version, so for ebook readers. So if you want to make a book, an ebook, or a PDF version if you want to make a printed copy. Okay, I think I'm done. I just leave you a lot of references of things that I think are interesting about Git, GitLab, and static site generators. Okay, and all the images you have seen are from the ProGit book. So this is also a practice that you should learn to give proper attribution for the materials you use in your presentations. Good. I think I covered the most. I would really appreciate if some have questions or stuff like that. We can maybe cover in detail, make an hands-on or something like this.
Two comments to start. One is to let everybody know how fortunate we have to have Fiore doing this. He's a master of everything he described, and it's a great resource for the network. And one suggestion, which is it's very easy to just start with a directory on your computer, turn it into a Git repo, and practice with branching and merging and do all the things. So you don't have to do everything through the cloud. On your own computer, you can experiment with creating and managing your own Git repos. Questions, comments for Fiore? Anybody?
Hello? Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Be brave, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm from Fab Lab Sorbonne, and it's just a little tip. With Windows, actually, when you install Git, you can have a SSH key without PuTTYGen. You need just go to Git GUI, and in help you have the SSH key for Windows users.
In addition, a very important note for Windows here. I'm just checking. Doesn't Git Lab itself add? I thought it added key generation. Oh, no, it refers to keygen. Sorry. I was just going to note, for Windows, there's been a radical change in the last year or so, which is there's now a Windows subsystem for Linux. And I linked that on the class page. And if you install the Windows subsystem for Linux in Windows 10, you have a whole Linux subsystem that works just the same like Linux or Macs. And I found that's by far the easiest way to work with Windows.
Okay.
Hi. I have a question.
Go ahead, introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Monica Pedro from FCT Fab Lab. And regarding the Git, it is mainly a code repository, but to which level could it be useful for us as students to manage and provide the revisions from the previous designs we have done, like 3D models, draws, coding? Would you advise us to keep the repository for our work in other files?
You right?
Well, yeah, yes, absolutely. I created a repository for the furniture alike, like CNC furniture. And this is, of course, depends on the size of the files that you have, but there is an option now which is called Git LFS that you can use for. I show you my repository.
Lost your screen share.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the screen sharing is gone. But in any case, it's the only issue with Git is that for large files, it's not efficient to keep all the copies of all the versions of your files. And also the Git protocol is not very efficient in transferring large amount of data. So there is an option which is called Git LFS that you can enable in your project, installing Git LFS. There is a reference in the slides that will manage large file differently than with the Git protocol, just to make it simple terms.
Filling in a little more on that, we want everybody to check in all their work, not just code, but every kind of file. The only exception is giant files, like gigabytes of videos or gigabyte STLs go through file sharing. But Git's very valuable to version any kind of file. To manage sizes on Fab Cloud, we're expecting hundreds of megabytes a person through the class, so it's gigabytes per lab. But I have personal repositories that are tens of gigabytes that Git handles just fine. The thing to be aware of is normal Git, every file exists twice. It exists in your file system and it exists in the history. And every change you make to a binary file gets checked into the history. And so for large files, you'll quickly accumulate a lot of binary history. And so what Git LFS does is it tracks the existence of the file, but it doesn't keep checking it in to the history. And you would use that just for very large files. And so the rule of thumb for where you need it is the size of your repository. We'll keep an eye on your repository sizes. In fact, Fiore, I wanted to ask you to update the generator to track repo sizes.
I'm doing that with the email address also.
Okay. But the rule of thumb is tens of megabytes per person per week for hundreds of megabytes per person per semester. And then if you're generating more content than that, you should look at Git LFS, or for even bigger things, put it outside. But Git is very much not just for code. It's for versioning and tracking and merging any kind of file.
I have a small question.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Kwame Braxton with the Insight Focus Group out of Jackson, Mississippi. I wanted to know, how do you upload video files to the Git system?
So there's a really important disclaimer there, which is in the class notes, I covered transcoding.
Okay.
Let's see. If you move to your left a little bit, we'll see more than your shoulder.
You can only see the shoulder. Sorry about that. Hold
on. I covered transcoding. And so in the class notes, the issue there is if you just take a video with your cell phone of a project, say, it could easily be 100 megabytes without much effort at all. So you could have one video that equals the size of all of the work we expect for you for the whole semester.
Okay.
So what we don't want you to do is just take any video or any picture from your camera and upload it. In the notes I covered, and go back to that part of the video, very powerful tools compress audio and video. So pictures from your camera might be 10 megabytes, but when you compress them for web resolution, they might be 100 kilobytes. In the same way, the videos for the class site should be of your work, of your projects and your documentation. And a reasonable size for those, once you've compressed them for the web, is just a few megabytes. And so in the class, I covered a very powerful tool that can transcode and can take your video and compress it down to web resolution. So it's just a few megabytes. Once you've done that, then you don't need to do anything special, because in those notes I cover how to produce MP4 videos, which are part of the HTML5 standard, which means any web browser can play them.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Gotcha. Loud and clear.
Yeah, Neil, FabLab, Shandiga, they are asking which is the recommended way to edit the website on the Fab Academy. There is no recommended way other than all the allowed ways. No, so either through Git, cloning the archive, directly in the web interface, what you can do with the web interface, whatever makes it easier for you. Of course, I think it's unpractical to edit everything on the web interface, but this is personal taste.
Yeah, I think I would say that more strongly, that very quickly you should get mad at edit. So the GitLab web interface covers all the things Fiore mentioned, the issue tracking and the Kanban boards and all these different things, and the CI pipelines. One function of the website is you can actually edit, and that's the worst one. We hope you'll very quickly get frustrated with that and take the little bit of time to set up with a key so you can pull your website onto your own computer and edit locally. It's so much more powerful. That's really what we want you to progress to. And I want to underscore, Fiore made template sites with a particular Jekyll workflow. But we actually hope that was to make it easy, but we hope many of you will delete that and replace them with your own site. You can use any type of site format. And if you look at the prior years, you'll see the sites are very, very different. They're very personal and expressive. So if you're overwhelmed and you're happy with what Fiore gave you, stick with it. But we hope you'll start to look beyond that, and you can use any sort of site you'd like.
So, hi Fiore. Yeah, I have two questions. So the first one is, I know that we are trying to keep our students to have a website smaller than 300 megabytes. So that also means that any project that we're trying to upload a GitLab should have less than that. That's the first question. And the second question is, I'm really interested in push my lab because we are about like 15 people. We have like 7 or 8 Fab Academies graduated. So I'm trying to push them to use more GitLab to have more projects that we don't solve. But then, it's hard for them to develop like Git books, or now I just learned how to use Reveal.js. That is super fun to make, like, for example, PPTs. And it's super, so what else can you recommend us to kind of like, convince them that GitLab, I'm having like this, Office versus PPT, and I want to share their value in GitLab, but then I need to also convince it to use GitLab at the same time.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that you can use for this. First of all, the web publishing workflow. Now I've shown you also only the, let's say, easy static site generators. But for example, I'm using this continuous integration to build more complex applications that are maybe React application, for example. That basically it's a framework for developing single page applications that is also used for doing Facebook, for example. And these new frameworks require a build step in terms that they generate code which is optimized with dynamic loading of modules, all these things. And this is all built inside GitLab. But like the slides that you are seeing, these ones are marked down inside an HTML file. So all this navigation and I have presentation controls, all these things This is all generated from a Markdown workflow. Other things that the part of the issue tracking and the project management, I think it's really modern in terms that like everybody is using Trello, but I see that Trello limits the API, for example. So if you want to make something for example, a booking system for the rooms in your lab, you can easily use the issue trackers on the Kanban board to see which room is busy at which time, for example. The GitLab itself can be used as a database, as Neil said. Like, for example, the storing a YAML file or JSON files. And you can make very easily web pages that read this JSON data or YAML data with jQuery, with plain HTML, and you can render everything. So I think this is a very modern workflow. It misses maybe, I don't know, maybe the polish of other tools, like Travis for continuous integration. It's a bit more powerful. But since you can do everything that Docker can, and every software today supports Docker, so everything that can go into a Docker machine can be done on GitLab automatically. And this is like you can build firmware for AVR microcontroller. You can make images, Linux distribution images. Basically, they are doing like this. I mean, everything now is done through a continuous integration process. Like if you make a mobile application with Flutter, that is a tool from Google, you can basically compile the Android, the iOS application out of the source code inside the continuous integration engine.
I'd add two more. So, Rodrigo, one of the reasons to learn all of this as a PowerPoint replacement is since I switched to doing that, I have every talk I ever gave. And each talk is only a few kilobytes of pointers. Instead of these 100 megabyte PowerPoint files, you have content, and then your talks are just few kilobyte pointers into them. And it's really liberating to work that way. And the thing I was alluding to, another role where GitLab is central in running a lab is we have machines as projects. The documentation is part of the machine project, and then the membership of the machine project are the machine users and trainers. And we have labs, and the labs have safety training, and the membership of the lab project are the different types of users. And then the machines are shared with the labs. And so all of those things means just to work in the lab, the workflow itself just naturally flows through use of GitLab. We didn't start that as policy. We grew into it because we were doing each of those things separately. EchoFab asks about plain HTML, CSS. So personally, I like making websites with just plain HTML. In GitLab, you still need the YAML to publish it, but you do what Fieri just showed you. You put in, there's a very simple YAML template, which is how to publish plain HTML. So you'll either edit or replace the existing YAML with one that just simply publishes HTML, just as Fieri showed you.
And maybe Neil, I can do a quick demo on how to remove the YAML and make a new one.
Get set to do that. Just quickly, Vigan Ashram is saying, I see it on my computer, but not on GitLab. Usually that's because you're using absolute rather than relative links. You have links pointing to where the file is on your computer to see if you're using an absolute or relative links. Instructors, Karpoor, you have instructor pages. Now, sorry, just before we get to your demo, Pete is asking a really important question on delete. This is really important to stop and talk about. Git makes it really, really, really hard to delete something intentionally. So if you accidentally commit a giant file and push it, it's there for history. If you do something really bad, you need to be a Git expert to actually go into the history, do surgery, split it, and take it out. But roughly, you can't delete once you commit. That's why it's really important with Git, before you commit, you do Git status to see what you're going to commit. And then you need a utility. And I use the little Linux utility du. You need a utility to check the size of what you're committing. And so look before you commit, because it's very hard to uncommit. So Fiori's going to show now how to move a project from, so in fact, Fiori, why don't you explain the existing template and then explain how to move it to plain HTML?
Yes, okay. So I wanted to answer first the question about the file sizes. So we have a soft limit on 300 megabytes. That means that if your repository becomes more than 300 megabytes, you will get an email warning you that you got this file. But the hard limit about publishing is 500 megabytes this year, because many of the students had trouble to stay in the 300 megabytes. So we hope that this time it will be less stressful for students and for the sizes. Each project has this limitation. That means that even if you create your personal project, if it's bigger than that, it won't be published, but still it will be working. So that if a project doesn't pass this check, size check, doesn't mean it's deleted. It's only that it's not published under the fabcloud.io domain. So about the template, I show you the site as it is. That should be philbasile.fabcloud/MKDocs. Okay. So this is a similar template than what we had. You have the MKDocs material, which I don't have here, I think. No. Okay. I can just go to any of the student websites and show you. Hopefully someone that didn't yet update the website. I hope one. Okay, this is the MKDocs template. So you see you have a number of sections. You have an about page, you have an assignments page, and each of the assignments is clickable from here. So I try to just to adapt a little the MKDocs to the Fab Academy, let's say, content, but this is very nice and clean, I think, and you have a separate part on the final projects. So if you don't have interest in improving and making your own website, this is a start from, I think, a good starting point. How this is done? Basically, this is created using the MKDocs, which is a static set generator. This is a Python package. So in this file requirements, you have basically the two packages that you have to install in Python for using the template. And after you install these packages with pip, you can run MKDocs as locally in your computer to preview your work. It will start a server on port 3000. So localhost 3000, you will be able to just see your website like you would see it on GitLab. This is built on GitLab thanks to this file, which is called GitLab CI, and basically does what I told you. So pip install -r requirements.txt is what is executed before starting any processing, based on the Python image from Docker. And then every time you make a change in your files, the script will run MKDocs build, which is how you build the static version of your website. And the site will be built inside the _site folder which is then renamed as public. And GitLab will publish the public. This will be done only in the master branch. So if you push another branch, like a development branch or a draft branch, it won't be published. Only if you push to the master, it will be published. And basically the content is inside this docs folder. There is a simple index.md, which is a markdown file. And GitLab gives you this nice syntax highlighting of the markdown files. So it's easy also to use the web interface to edit the markdown. Or you can see the preview in real time with all the pictures and all the stuff. And inside the docs folder, there is an images folder where I uploaded images, which you can upload directly with the GitLab user interface also. And an assignments folder with one file for each assignment. So very simple. And I did put in the template all the examples to format, for instance, code, to include the gallery, to include the video from Vimeo, a 3D model using Sketchfab. So you have basically all the little building blocks that allow you to make your project page. If you want to remove it, it's pretty easy. We just go, I had created the test project just before my test with this same content. So you just take the Git account. I need to share my terminal. 1 second. Okay. So I think this is shared. Yes. So I just clone the repository.
Sherry, zoom in if you can.
Okay. It's okay now?
Better, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just go to my test, and now I have the old files, no? So I can just git rm -cached star minus r star, and then commit removing everything, and then I just push to the master. Okay. So back to my Chrome, I just reload the page, and there is nothing else left. The only thing that is left is the GitLab CI, which I should delete too. So I will just delete gitrm.gitlab CI, and then commit again the same. I'm not sharing again this terminal, but it's there. So I just also deleted that file. And now I can start again uploading an HTML file, for example, index.html. I just write a quick one, HTML body hello.
So Fury, I'm going to have to drop for a meeting, so I'm going to stop the recording, but continue on as long as you or other people have patience. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Recording has stopped.
Okay. And then I just add the HTML GitLab CI and write here HTML, and it will create the default one, which is this one, basically. And now this project is being built. So I have it here running. You see this tab, there is pipelines, jobs. If you click on jobs, you will see what happens inside the CI. So it's basically, starting the Alpine image from the Alpine project, which is a Linux distribution. And then it's checking out your project from Git. And then it's this workflow is very simple. So it's just creating this public folder and copying all the file inside this public folder. And this basically means your project is published. So it's copied on a server in a folder that is connected to the web server. So it's served under FabAcademy.org/. Okay, I see another question. So the question is about the GitLab API. So what I used is this GitLab Python API. And it's very simple actually to use. There are a lot of examples here. You need to generate a token from your user. Like you go in the settings, you go into access tokens, you put a name, my access token, and you can select the type of the access token that you want to create based on user. Then you have this one, and you can you can basically copying this token use the GitLab like you were logged in as a user. Now I will just settings. Sorry, I need to just delete this token. Okay, so once you have this, you can basically go to the example. For example, if you want to list your projects, it's very simple. You log in with the GitLab with the token, and then you have an API like projects list. And if you want to list only the ones that are owned by you, just specify the owned parameters. So it's very easy. It's like a normal Python library. It's nothing difficult. Any other questions?
Hey, this is Greg from the Dassault Lab.
Hello.
I just wanted to make a comment, which is to reiterate something that you said earlier, which is your recitation from last year had a very good description of how to use Git through the command line, just a very basic. So if people want to get that, I would recommend that they go back and watch your recitation from last year.
Thanks. So that's not running. Initially. I don't understand, but if there is an issue, let's say you can open a ticket in GitLab. No, you don't email the screenshot. You open an issue in GitLab in the class project, and this is how we communicate in the for the Fab Academy. So you have this project which is called class that you have access to. I recommend to put a star on it and to set your settings to watch, as I told you before. And here you can open any problem that you have. Okay. Other questions?
Hello, Fiore. Here, Roberto from Ecuador.
Hello.
I have a question. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I have a question. How the students could make the same project as Machine Week, no? In the Machine Week, how they could manage this Git repository?
So all the instructors are master in the group of their lab. So basically that means that you can create yourself a new project, and then you can add the students as members, as developers, or as masters. So this here is the regulation. All the instructors can do everything inside the lab, And that means that you can create as many projects as you want. One suggestion I give you is, for example, you can create a machine design project where you collect all the designs and add the students and maybe make a Kanban board with all the students' names and assign them the tasks, or have them assign themselves the tasks, so that you have also a way of showing who worked on what in the machine week. And at the same time, you can also use this as to collect the outputs of the project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Fiore. I have two questions.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing, first question is, how do I experiment with Git as I'm learning it, and not mess up my class documents? What do you suggest for that?
I've shown before that you can make your personal projects that are published under your name.fabcloud.io/name of the project. So if you look at the slides from before, which are linked in the class page, and of course you can create a GitHub account and mess up GitLab, or you can just work locally, because basically the same commands that you remotely you have locally in your computer. You can even create a local server. If you are running Linux, it's very easy to set up a local Git archive for the lab that you can push and pull to for just internal testing. I use this, for example, Git a lot when I make some project that has 4 or 5 computers running it. And instead of having to sync manually the software between all the computers, when they boot, they pull from a shared repository the file that they have to have. And so automatically the system syncs with Git.
And one more question is, if I already started using your templates, then let's say halfway down in the semester, I realize that I want to change everything and start from scratch. Is it as simple as deleting the existing YAML file and replacing it with a new YAML file?
Yes, of course you have to convert all your content from Markdown to HTML, but this is totally feasible because it's Markdown and can be converted to everything. So I prefer to work now in Markdown because it doesn't let you focus on how your text looks or your content looks, more on what your content is. When you see something written only in text form, it really must be good content, no? You don't need if you have cool fonts, lot of pictures, stuff like this, then it's easy to forgive a little the content, no? But when it's only content, no?
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I think we can close. Last question.
Hello, Fiore. Bridget has a question
Hello.
for you. She's in class right now, and she's not able to ask it. She wanted me to ask it for her. She's edited her Markdown pages, but the commit is failing. Her name's Bridget O'Neill.
Okay, rather than going through her directly, I'll show you in general how to do this. So if you are on a project, for example, okay, let's see if I can find Bridget. Bridget, it's called
Brigeette. No D.
Okay, let's see if I can find her here. No.
She's in the Lorraine node.
Okay, I'll look for her then. Yeah. Okay. So I can go to the pipelines and see that it's failed. So when you go to your project and you go to this tab, CI/CD and pipelines, you can see this is every time you push a change, the YAML is executed, and this has failed. So I can go here and look what is wrong with that. So there is an error here in the parsing the configuration file. So she probably edited the configuration file and there is an error. And you also get an email when your job failed. You get an email that your job failed. So you just go here and look the YAML file from MKDocs. And I think, let's see, you can check the commit. This is the version tracking. No? This is the nice thing, because so she added this file and tried to change the theme of MKDoc, and you can go back to the first pipeline that doesn't fail and restore the file to the correct one. Okay.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you, thank you, Fiore.
You're welcome. Okay, so thanks everybody for the patience for this long recitation, and bye bye.
Thank you, Fiore. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you, Fiore.
Bye.
Grazie mille, Fiore.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thanks, Fiore.
Next one.
Bye.
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 Bye. Hi.
Goodbye.